Ok, comenzamos con Joana Isabel, El Nuevo Día.
Good afternoon. I do have a couple of questions. The first one has to do with the UPR. Although I understand that most of the adjustments would be on the administrative side, the truth is that sometimes having back office is key to ensure that professors and students receive support either for research or for completing their academic task, and that's a concern there. The other concern that has to do with PREPA, and I would like to know how much the rate will change based on the restructuring. The current trend, according to the fiscal plan, would be about 28 cents kilowatt hour in about a decade. And I wonder how much that target would decrease based on the restructuring of the pension system and the restructuring with the creditors.
So, thank you, Joana Isabel. On the first question, there's no question, there's no doubt that you need an effective back office to run the university. Without a doubt. From accounting to finance to billing to procurement. So, in no way, shape, or form is anyone discussing anything less than just an efficient back office. And of the $94 million reduction in the subsidy going to UPR, the operating expense reduction at the university is only $7 million. Remember that the budget of the university is $1.2 billion, más o menos. It is a $7 million reduction. It is only in one line item. That line item is non-teaching personnel, and it's the equivalent of approximately 3% attrition, which is natural and consistent from previous years. There is no other major cut. The other reduction in costs is a reduction in the amount to be added to the pension system as a result of required pension reform, and that's 40. So of the 94, 47 is a reduction in cost, a reduction in costs at the pension, and the 7 in the back office administrative staff, which could be achieved through attrition with no layoffs, no terminations. The remaining portion, the other 50 or so, is increases in revenues. It is increase in undergraduate tuition. It is an increase in graduate tuition. It is an increase in private donations and alumni. It is an increase in federal grants received. It is also a dues and fees. And it is other, as you probably know, UPR has facilities it rents out. There are other forms of revenues that they bring up. Somebody today said that the tuition was the same as state universities. I want to assure you that it is not. The fiscal plan does not require tuition to get to the level of mainland state universities. Neither in undergraduate nor in graduate. Nor does it require going to the level of tuition in private universities on the island. So, for example, graduate tuition at the medical school would be about 50%, I believe. Maria Carmen, just make sure I'm saying the right number. About 50% of the medical campus, medical school in Ponce, the private. And for law school, it would be about 35% of the law school tuition at Interamericana Law School. Is that right? So the tuitions are still substantially lower than any university, undergraduate or graduate here on the island, not mentioning anything close to mainland. Second question was what? Joana Isabel, the second question was PREPA and rates.
With PREPA, exactly. Your expectations in terms of how that trend in terms of the rate would go down based on the pension restructuring and the and the public debt restructuring.
So I don't know what, Alejandro, if you could just confirm, the 28-cent rate projection is without debt service but with pension restructuring.
Alejandro.
Can you, I don't know which number you're referring to start from.
The 28-cent projection, the 25 to 28-cent projection includes unrestructured debt. So that is the full cost of paying debt prior to any reform, and a range of a pension reform cost, or I'm sorry, the cost of a pension reform.
So since I don't have a plan of adjustment on file, as you know, we have an RSA that we've agreed to that is proceeding now that we've kind of told the judge that, we're going to proceed to exit Title III under all circumstances. It is our goal to exit Title III, and we would hope to have a plan of adjustment early in next calendar year. But I can't tell you the actual numbers because on the pension reform, as you probably are aware, we gave them a range, we gave them options in the fiscal plan. And we still need to have discussions with the PREPA ERS. So I don't have a particular number for you. The fiscal plan shows just a range from X to Y. And on the RSA, it brings the numbers down. The transition charge that's in the RSA today, assuming that if there are no other changes, is what's in the RSA schedule.
Tajoni.
I do have another question about PREPA. The other one has to do precisely with the time frame for renewable projects to be built. I see that according to the plan, we won't achieve the target of 2025 in terms of renewables. I wonder why you're so confident that basically more than 2,000 megawatts of renewables would be part of the grid or would be connected to the grid in 2024.
I think our chart and our plans just align with the IRP and with the requirements that have been outlined in the IRP. Our confidence comes from having confidence that this transformation is going to proceed. But Alejandro, do you want to?
No, that's correct. The projections in terms of the amount of capacity that it's integrated into the system and the timeline for that just follows the IRP and the schedule that PREP set forward. So we're not making any changes to that. It's just what PREP and the IRP currently project will be the timeline and the capacities that are coming online over the next couple of years.
Regarding, and given the current time frame from PREPA, I believe that they're supposed to be selecting the bidders or the winning bidders next July. Is that feasible? I mean, basically putting together 2,000 megawatts in basically 2 years of renewables?
So, we'll have to see where that process ends up, but currently they are going through the steps that need to take place to get bids, review them, and then select those bids that are within, the lowest possible cost from capable developers. But that's ultimately what that process between PREPA, PREB, and eventually LUMA, that's how it should go and play out over the next years.
The first RFP is 1,000 megawatts.
Correct.
And that one's already out. That one we're waiting for the responses. Then the next one is again 1,000, right? 2,000.
About 1,000, yeah.
1,000.
From the mainland, we have some people connected. Give me again. Our colleagues from the mainland, do you have questions? Your turn. To Zoom? No one?
Hi, this is Michelle Kasky from Bloomberg News. Can you guys
Go ahead,
hear me?
Michelle. Sure.
Great.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Great. Thank you for this press conference and for including us on the mainland. For Mr. Esco or anyone else who'd like to answer this, Mr. Esco, just a few minutes ago, you said that the aim is to have the PREPA debt adjustment plan to the court by early next calendar year. As you know, an RSA had already, a debt plan on PREPA had already been filed before the pandemic, and then the board asked for the court to put that on hold. So what needs to happen between now, because that's a number of months, what specifically needs to happen between now and early 2022 for for the board to be able to ask the court to again move forward with the adjustment plan?
So it's a combination of things. Part of it is that there are other creditor groups we also need to deal with. There are unsecured creditors, there are fuel line creditors, there is the pension reform that we just discussed earlier. All of that needs to be incorporated into a plan of adjustment. The RSA on file is just one group of creditors. But the other part of it is that we are in the process, as you probably know, of a very intense schedule on what we believe will be, and we hope will be, the confirmation of the Commonwealth Plan of Adjustment before the end of this calendar year. So there's just a question of managing both the court's docket, our own docket, and getting everything done and getting everything through the process of an upcoming disclosure statement hearing, solicitation, the process all the way through to confirmation hearings on the Commonwealth. And so it's a matter of just balancing.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I have two questions regarding PREPA. One is there's been some estimates recently that a large number of PREPA employees will not move over to Luma, and this could cost up to $120 million a year. And the Commonwealth keeps saying there's room to accept these employees in other areas. I'm wondering if the board is on board with that. And also, has the procurement process for this solar been delayed, and what accounts for that delay? We've been hearing some reports of a lack of interest from market participants.
So I'll comment on the first, but Alejandro, if you could get ready for the second one. So let's just think that there are on average about 4,000, 4,500 employees in the transmission and distribution part of PREPA. A portion of them are joining Luma. We don't know yet what the final number is because the process isn't over yet. But just pick a number, at least 1,000, probably more, will move to Luma. The second thing is that you need to take into account that a voluntary transition plan or an early retirement has been offered by PREPA, funded in PREPA's budget, approximately $85 million, 80-something million dollars, in order to enable anyone who doesn't wish to join Luma and does not wish to join the Commonwealth to early retire. And that $85 million is enough for, given the program is a 6-month payment plus accumulated vacation and sick plus a payment and a lump sum for healthcare, it's enough for 90% of the employees. And 90% will not early retire. As I said, some will go to Luma, are going to Luma. And then the last part is how many will come to the Commonwealth. So we don't know what the net number is. When we know what the net number is, we can figure out how many incremental spaces need to be budgeted. But about half of those numbers are already in vacant positions in the Commonwealth budget payroll lines that are already in the budget. So it really is 4 different numbers moving, right? How many of those positions are the ones that will be filled by Commonwealth, in the Commonwealth that are already funded? And that depends on who moves to the Commonwealth. How many will early retire? How many will go to Luma? Given we're not yet at transition, it just is an issue for us to get final numbers as we get closer. But I assure you that we will ensure that the Commonwealth budget has sufficient funding for any of the employees that do choose, rather than going to work for Luma and rather than early retiring, to come to the Commonwealth, which is in accordance with Puerto Rico law.
On the second question, yes, there's the ongoing process before PREP for an RFP for the first 1,000 megawatts. That the expected completion date of that process was by end of May or early June. PREP has extended that date. I don't believe the extension of that date is related to any problems with the process. It's just simply part of how these RFPs are worked. As issues come up, as you're getting feedback from bidders, you usually have to work those in, consider them, and then you adjust your timeline. To be quite honest, I'd rather have a couple of weeks, let's call it delays on the timeline, rather than but get good bids in with capable bidders than just rushing it and coming up with a bad outcome.
Eva Llorens, the Boyer.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
See? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, I have a question also about PREPA and one from PRASA. Um, Regarding PREPA, as you know, Luma is taking over transmission and distribution system on Tuesday. But however, Luma Energy still have processes before the PREP. At this point, as of today, it still doesn't have a system operation principles approved to operate the transmission and distribution system. It does not have yet, PREP has not approved yet a system remediation plan. And I haven't heard anything about the plan to divide PREPA between GENCO and GRIDCO. So I want to know what is going on with that in terms of that one, because I think it has to go before the board. And the question with PRASA has to do with PRASA owes money for energy to PREPA, and there are rumors going on that that PREPA might offset that, and I just wanted to know if that was accurate. I think it's 15 million.
Thank you, Eva. So the fiscal plans, both the PRASA fiscal plan and the PREPA fiscal plan, deal with the great majority of the questions you've asked in great detail. In short, on PRASA, we urge PRASA to continue negotiating whatever that account payable is to PREPA, and if they do not achieve a negotiated agreement, for them to turn to either arbitration and or other mechanisms to get to a final decision and solve the amounts owed between PRASA and PREPA. On the issue of PREPA, before I give it to Alejandro for detail, what I want to say is that we are working to make it happen. You're right, certain things have not yet happened, and I can't predict what will happen over the next 72 or 4 or 5 days, but we are confident that everyone is working as hard as possible to complete all the conditions precedent and to get to fulfillment, implementation of the contract as scheduled.
No, Natalie, the only thing I would add to that is that we know that PREB is working towards being able to issue its approvals as required by the date, so to enable Luma to take on June 1st. And I think that to the extent that there are some items that are not completed by then, there's always the option that Luma and the P3A, if they agree to that, they can waive those conditions. But as Natalie mentioned, the process and the efforts up to date, I know from Luma, the P3A, and PREB has been to achieve all of those conditions precedent and issue the necessary approvals.
Yeah, well, one clarification. So they are in the PRASA thing. So they are going to offset this payment, as far as you know, and also I wanted to know what the Financial Oversight and Management Board thinks about this request by Luma to get a full waiver from liability that would include willful misconduct and gross negligence.
So, well, I don't know exactly where they are in their process with PREB, and we'll leave it to PREB to make the decision that's in PREB's authority. The waiver itself of liability was part of the contract that the Oversight Board approved, and we understood that it was a necessity. In terms of the details of how this is worded and what they're negotiating with the regulator, we're leaving that to the regulator to make the decision that the regulator is authorized to make.
Thank you.
Salo Santana, Metro.
Yes, hi to all. I just have the first question about UPR. They were talking about the cuts and how those cuts in the fiscal plan, the $94 million, could hamper some of the funds. We talked about that in the last meeting, and Ms. Joresco, you were telling about the board was looking and the economic team was looking at that to consider how much of the cuts could be evaluated because it could hamper receiving those federal funds. Is there an estimate of how much that $94 million of cuts can go down because of those federal funds coming in, and how it can affect those federal funds?
No, not yet. That's exactly what we're working on. So all three laws have different sets of regulations, requirements, measurements. ARP has one set, CARES has another, CRSP or CRISP, whatever the acronym is, has a third. And each one has different measurements. One measures at the Commonwealth level, another measures at the Department of Education, another measures here. And so we're working through that, but I don't have an answer for you yet. If we have had an answer, we would have incorporated it into our discussion today and into that fiscal plan proposal. We just don't have it as of yet.
Okay. And I just want a clarification about PREPA, PREPA's fiscal plan. I was looking at page 75 of the draft, and I just want a clarification about the rates. Specifically, is being considered first a rate increase related to the debt restructuring, and without that debt restructuring, it could be an increase of between 5 to 6 cents kilowatt per hour. But then it talks about the pension reform, and that it will require another rate increase about 1.5 to 2.1 cents kilowatt per hour over the next 2 decades. So those are two separate rate increases. That's my first question. And the second one would be when those rate increases would go into place.
So I think it's important to note that PREPA hasn't been paying its debt for a number of years. There's a moratorium in place. And I think to some extent, everybody has gotten used to the rates without paying any debt, but not paying any debt isn't possible. And so what we tried to show is if you lifted the moratorium, if you didn't have the protection of PROMESA, the protection that PROMESA has given the Title III entities, you would have to pay all the debt. And all the debt translates to that, I think it's 5 to 7 cents increase in your rates. And the debt, the way the debt was entered into, was a gross revenue, or is, the creditors will argue, is gross revenues. And so what we're trying to show is if you do nothing, it's going to be 5 to 7 cents because you have to pay it. If you can restructure it, you can bring the amount down. And I don't know exactly how much down. It'll end up in whatever is the final plan of adjustment, the final terms. It's the same with the pensions, frankly. The PREPA pension system has been underfunded for some time. And, it can be paid, through what? I mean, it has to be paid eventually through rates. And you can pay all of it and just, if it's a balance, right? It's a balance between customer rates and the importance of ensuring pensions. And where that balance falls and how it falls on the customer is the question ultimately that is going to have to be answered with the help of PREPA, with the help of the government in that plan of adjustment. What we showed was if you had the full pension, if you fund all of it through rates, it's a substantial increase. In terms of when those increases would happen, first of all, I don't know what they will be. So we're showing you ranges because we don't know what the end answer will be. I don't have a prediction for you. But I would assume that after the plan of adjustment, you resolve these things and you move on and you pay your restructured debt and you start funding the pensions such that it's not going to go insolvent and not go bankrupt.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.